Our second keynote speaker is the organizer of this event and the founder of Zein Engineering Architects, Alexandre Zein. He is a Lebanese architect who won several awards and recognitions. He contributed to Beirut after the explosion and is still working on his project of a lifetime entitled Architectural Systems. So welcome on stage, Alexandre Zein.
I'm much honored to be here today with you guys. And today we're going to talk about, our contribution to the city of Beirut after the explosion that occurred 1 year ago. So, but of course, we're going to also talk about some of our projects that we worked on our office, some local international projects. So, 6 years ago, when I looked like a baby, I sort of graduated from the senior project that I carried out as the project of a lifetime, since it was so real by the time we were facing the Syrian refugee crisis that I so wanted it to be built. It was sort of the catalyst that woke my awareness about the real meaning of architecture, that it's not about the physical object. Architecture is about human aspiration and the adaptive response to a need, in a way that the role of an architect is to be able to adapt a selfless architecture to any situation. And it's too powerful that its impact has the ability to manifest itself to make a radical change. And of course, it has to be for everyone, for every single human being, and not just for the rich people who actually have enough money to make great buildings. So time made me realize and taught me that this project isn't supposed to be tailored only for the refugees, because we live in a world that have never found peace ever since the history of mankind. Humanity often faces incidents that disrupt lives, whether if it was caused by natural disasters such as tsunamis, earthquakes, floods, etc., or it can be man-made in war, refugee crisis. So 1 year ago, this is what happened to the port of Beirut. So it disrupted the lives of many Lebanese people, and the result, a total of 200,000 homes were affected by the blast, in which 3,000 were severely damaged. And also, 300,000 people were made homeless. Some poor families, they literally had no place to stay. And they were living in really bad condition, and they didn't have access to the simplest aspects, much like what is needed for animals, and even less. And also, landlords who rented their homes using the old wage system have completely misplaced their tenants, as new wages are to be enforced upon restoration. So we had a lot of people sleeping on the streets after the explosion. They had no place to stay. So in this dire situation, it's never about the building. It's not a question of a spectacular architectural design, yet it's a matter of humanity. That's why we introduce systems in architecture. And these systems, they don't belong to a particular place, yet they adapt to belong to the whole planet. So yes, I decided to build this project, and we called it the Squatter Settlement, because I felt the urge to help the Lebanese people, my people, to stay in a well-suited, sustainable venue temporarily until they find safe havens. So after a week of sleepless nights, I made a post on Instagram calling for volunteers. So the next day, I had 60 incredible people in my office ready to help and rebuild the project. People from all fields. We had engineers, we had architects, and many other more. So what is the Squatter Settlement? This system is based on a matrix, in which you would understand the whole sophistication once this matrix is understood. It's made of a core and a periphery of plugins. It's a served and a serving. So the core is the main shaft that contains all the services that the end user need to create a self-sufficient settlement using natural energy resources. For instance, electricity is powered using PV panels alongside a small generator for backup. And we're going to need a small cartridge seal. We're going to need a rainwater collector to collect water from gravity. We're going to need a water tank and a PRP. And of course, for the overall system, we need a treatment system. So rainwater is collected by gravity and pumped up to the water tank and stored in 10,000 liter water tank, and then pumped back to the units, clean and drinkable. And of course, the cartridge will sort of purify and clean the water. Although sewage is constantly being recycled using an external treatment plant common for each couple of units. So gray water makes its treatment cycle to become reusable for toilet water, for irrigation, for cleaning water, maybe laundry. And as for the black water, is whether being drained to an already existing sewage system. And if we don't find any existing sewage system, we can sort of use a black tank where we can store and treat the black water. But of course, we have to regularly, clean it. And of course, we have this sort of on-site anaerobic digester that will serve the whole settlement. So biodegradable waste and commercial waste is automatically turned into, biogas, electricity, heat, and it's also a fertilizer. So we have the core, we have the bathrooms, we have the kitchens. These are fixed features ready to be plugged in by the refugees. So in that sense, we can stimulate infinite number of typologies with different number of scales, according to the number of family members. It could be one person living in this, or it can be a whole family. So we have a core that swirls around it 4 units. So this is a clan. And here we have 4 clans that swirls around another core. So the part looks like the whole, which reminds us of the theory of fractals. It describes the theory of nature as a self-organizing system. This is when you explore the same pattern in different scales. So it's a never-ending pattern. So we sort of associated this theory of fractals in the project so we can delineate the matrix. So here we have 4 units, which is a clan. 4 clans will make it a sub-tribe. 4 sub-tribes, this is a tribe. And 4 tribes, this is a confederation. So it's a never-ending pattern. We can stimulate infinite number of typologies for infinite number of families. And this is a whole settlement. And this system can be built anywhere in the world by adapting to its context. But of course, it has some sort of aesthetical value here. Although in Beirut, after the explosion, there was this sort of voice in my head telling me that I should build this project for the people of Beirut that became homeless in their own country. So first we had to identify the implementation area. So the project must not be so far away from their neighborhoods, from their homes, so they can maintain their regular life and social functions. And we sort of targeted 3 types of family victims. First, we had the families that have their houses completely destroyed and they're unrepairable, and they needed a place to stay, a new place to stay permanently. And some other families had their homes partially destroyed, and they're like repairable, but they need like a year or a couple of months to be repaired. So they needed a place to stay temporarily until they get back to their new homes after being fixed. And third, we had the families that were living in old wage system, and they got ousted by their landlords, so they need a place to stay permanently. So sort of identify the empty lands in the affected zone. So these were the private ones. So it was sort of really impossible for us to use these lands. They're so expensive. And then we found a really interesting land for the municipality. I became really friends with them, but they didn't give me the land. So it's still stuck there, permanent. So we sort of built 16 houses that were supposed to fit inside 2,000 square meter land. And we sort of compacted it to fit inside 1,600 square meter land. And this project can reach 2-story levels in a way that instead of having 16 families, we can have 32 families inside 1,600 square meter land. That, of course, the project can be dismantled in like a matter of days, and the land will get back to its original state. So we did some executional drawings for the project. So as you can see here, we have different scales. Here we have open space, bedroom with the living room. Here we have partitions. We have 1 bedroom, living and dining. Here we have 2 bedrooms, and of course we can reach 3 bedrooms. And there's this ideology that says that living in a shelter is like living in a cottage or like living in something really ugly. So we sort of designed the facade in a way to appear really elegant and really sort of attractive in its design. So to be living in a beautiful architecture. So essentially, architecture is sort of encoded in a way to be assembled and dismantled in like a matter of days. So it does not really require much manpower. And of course, these steel structures are really light-weighted, and the civil engineers designed it in a way that by connecting all these elements all together, we'll come up with a robust and strong structure. And of course, we sort of uplifted the whole structure in a way to make sure that the infrastructure is reserved, and we can protect the shelters from flooding as well. And as you can see here, we sort of reserved tracks for the walls and for the doors and for the windows. So it's all encoded in a way that you build it like a puzzle. So it's like you're building a puzzle. So this is the overall structure. And as you can see, we have catwalks. We need catwalks to arrive to their house. And as for the As for the walls, we use these sandwich panels. You know, these ones are used for the walls, and the right one here is used for the roof. But of course, what's really interesting about this material is that it's lightweighted, and it insulates perfectly, and it's cheap. And of course, it's an amazing material. And we used for the flooring, bamboo flooring and vinyl, since it's safe, durable, and eco-friendly. And for the furniture, we used reinforced paper panels. So the construction of this shelter is, again, very easy. It's just like building a tent in a forest. So this is a small demonstration of it. But of course, there's a little bit of technique that any person shall learn. So we need some tools and accessories and some bolts. And by connecting all these elements together, we have the columns, the beams, and we have a place reserved for doors, and we have the windows. And of course, we have the protections of the windows and the walls, and we need to have the roof, bamboo flooring, and of course, you need some silicone and some small materials, some tools. So, but there's this important phenomenon called schooling. This is where people sort of learn easy techniques in a socially active manner. So there will be like corps of trained builders that will train others, and then the system will spread. So you know, in the case of any emergency, like the one happened 1 year ago, any person, when he learns this technique, he can build his own shelter. So it's a permanent temporality instead of a temporal permanence. People can stay in a temporal system permanently. They can be dismantled in like a matter of days. And then we sort of made an accurate BOQ. We sort of stacked all the materials needed for this project. And it turned out that the budget per 4 houses will cost $47,000. So the average price per house is $12,000, which is considered negligible compared to how much a damaged house will cost and how much time it will take. And so, not to forget that some houses require like a year or a year and a half to be repaired. So these people are staying 1 year and a half precarious. They have no place to stay. They don't have any home. So that's why this project is in need. And what's really surprising that it's not over. 1 year after the explosion, there are still families that are still homeless after the explosion, and they have no place to stay. So this project is in need, is a must. So it's a permanent cycle. So you say maybe $12,000 per house, but it's a one-time payment for a system that will be used enduringly. So whenever a crisis happens like this one happened, you know, people sort of squat the settlement, so they are settlement squatters. And then when this crisis is over, it's whether they stay permanently in this house, or they can sort of dismantle it and store it so it can be reused again for another emergency. So it's a never-ending cycle. So, you know, 6 years ago, I really wanted this project to be built, but I was a baby. So 1 year ago, the explosion happened, and I felt the urge to build this project, but we didn't have the time, we didn't have the money, we didn't have the place, we didn't have this much support. It was short time. Well, today, 1 year and 1 week after the explosion, we did it, and we built it, and it's right here in front of you. But of course, it's not over. We're still redesigning. We're still working on the testing. It's still an ongoing process. So this is just the beginning of the project of a lifetime, of course. But of course, we need more donations. We need more help. We need more support from everywhere in the world. Everybody is watching us live. We need more support and donations to build more prototypes of the squatter settlement. Not only for the Lebanese people, but for every homeless in the planet needs this project. So donate if you can. Well, moving on to some other projects. We worked in Beirut, but this time these are projects for rich associations. So we had a project in Beirut, and particularly in a dense, bustling district called Shiyeh Hain Rumene. So this area faced 25 years of war. So the result, we have a lot of devastated and unfinished structures that looks like this. So investors sort of attempted to replace this structure by commercial residential blocks so ugly that looks like this. So the area has nearly 2% of greenery and very high level of pollution and no public attraction, no public space. So this is the land here. And usually in Lebanon, private space always remained too private. So that's why we miraculously convinced the client to create some sort of public attraction by introducing some retails and coffee shops on the ground floor and some offices in the first floor. So instead of taking the maximum footprint like all the investors do to fit as much apartments as they can, instead we sort of brought all the footprint to the minimum and went higher. And by going higher, you can enjoy the amazing views of Beirut. And of course, you can reserve a place for public attraction down here. And then in order for us to retrospect the old unfinished structures of the area, we sort of brought all the structural elements to the extremity to be part of the architectural design. And then in order for us to neutralize the exceeded exploitation, we sort of subtracted parts of the nude slab to become part of the motions facade. And we sort of planted with the micro air glaze so it could absorb the carbon. And then we sort of uplifted deviated the whole structure so it could remind us of the resilience of Ain Mene. So a simple rational building has greenery that surpasses the 2% of the area. And it imposes itself as a sort of an inspiring landmark element that is sort of bringing positivity to the context. So we sort of cladded the structures with the ACP panels so we can give it a strong character that would remind us of the period of our time. And then we sort of recessed all the glazing system in a way that during summer times, these nude slabs, they act as shading devices, although during winter, sun can sort of warm up the entire apartment. So here you can see the connections from the inside of the apartment to the sea. So you see how beautiful the Mediterranean Sea and Beirut. Yet another project in Beirut, in Jdeide, it was a client who wanted a glass tower. So it infused the street with a sort of muscular skeleton element that is fighting gravity. So, and of course, it has a sort of dynamism around the street. And there's a double levels for the skin. And then we have this bracing structure that is holding the whole structure. And it hosts more than 100 offices and companies. They all overlook the amazing silhouette of Beirut and the sea. Well, from Beirut to the world, we're going to talk about some international projects. So we recently won the competition to design a residential complex for Renko. And we also obtained the most creative award for Land Complex. So it was located in Riyadh, KSA, in a very high-end neighborhood in King Abdullah Street. So this is the land, 9,750 square meters. So in a challenge to create a residential complex that maximizes the use of outdoor spaces in an area that avoids sun exposure, so the design is flexibly in adaptive response to its context. So the assignment was to design 150 apartments split into 3 types. We needed 70 units for the 1-bedroom type, 65 units for the 2-bedroom type, and 15 units for the 3-bedroom types. And the regulation, roof shall be 50% of the third, and the third shall be 50% of the second. So first we had to identify the DNA of the project. So we got inspired by the sand pattern of the desert of KSA, and to create the main skin shield pattern here that will protect the overall project. And then here we sort of got inspired from Riyadh City's pixelation pattern, and we sort of created this perforated skin shield for the apartments that will protect these apartments from the intense sun rays and will foster privacy among families. And then we sort of stimulated many forms, many pixelations that could be used for these apartments. So the iteration of apartments acquires the same essential ingredients to create a superior protected living experience. So each unit acts as an organic cell, that transforms its morphology according to tenants' need, synchronizing with real-time environments. So we sort of created all the types that we needed so we can just expand them. So this perforated sliding skin shield sort of transformed this location according to its orientation, almost like a nervous system that will link between 2 otherwise separate environments. So first, emanating from a modular grid, we sort of created an infinity loop that reminds us of the infinity of the desert. And then we sort of uplifted the southern side so we can protect the overall project. So the southern side is the skin shield that reminds us of the desert of KSA. And then the intersection was reserved that will connect the overall project together, the private and the common spaces. And then in the ground floor, we took the maximum footprint. We needed to fit as much apartments in the ground floor as possible. And then we sort of created some courtyards, like 8 by 8, to make sure that every apartment will receive enough daylight. And then, of course, we change with the heights. And then by mingling all these apartments together, it sort of cascade up to reach 150 apartments. And they all enjoy the amazing views of Riyadh. And each apartment has its own garden. So we had to study the sun path to make sure that the skin shield will perfectly protect all the apartments. And then this cascading movement will sort of cast shades directly to the gardens in a way that the people can, during all times of the day, they can spend time outside in the shades. And then, as you know, in Riyadh, sometimes the wind is sandy. So that's why this skin shield was sort of distills and filters the sandy wind, and we ensured a natural ventilation. And as you can see in the node here, we'll connect the overall spaces. So we have the private, and you have the recreational and common spaces. And then we sort of designed the corridors to be dynamic instead of being just sort of, linear. So this is the perspective. This is the view during the day. This is the view at night. This is the city. And of course, we sort of planted all the apartments that all have gardens. And you can see the infinity shape. And of course, the main skin shield that gives the desert pattern. And here we have the common spaces where people can sort of meet and swim and spend some time outside, overlooking the mingled apartments. And of course, in the ground floor, we have, the recreational spaces where people can sort of walk and spend some time there. And here you can see how the skin shield sort of casts shades within the apartments in a way that give it this image of a desert. So in the basements, we had the parkings. In the basement one, we had all the recreational areas in the courtyards. So we had spa, we had pool, we had kindergarten, we had theaters, and many more. In the ground floor, we had the lobby in the middle, and here you can see that dynamic corridors and the courtyards. So this is the lobby. And here on the first floor, we created the gym in a way that you're sitting in your apartment. You walk 10 steps, you'll be at the gym. And same for the sky garden created here in the main connections. And then it cascades up to reach 150 apartments. So the end user has the flexibility and liberty to open and close these panels during all times of the day. So we can have faultless transparency during sun absence, or we can have considerable isolation during sun presence. And when the sun is present, it sort of casts shades within the apartment in a very dynamic way, as you can see here. So these were the sections. Moving from KSA to Kuwait, this is another competition we won in Kuwait City. It was located in an old parking lot that once used to be a government hospital called Al Amiri Hospital. It was torn down in the 1970s. So the aim was to sort of revitalize the place that once used to be a public destination for medical services. So we were asked to create a greenhouse on its top without mislaying its actual function, which is the parking lot. So we thought that instead of keeping the same structure as it is and try to establish a public destination that does not actually blend with the parking lot, we sort of brought all the structural element of the parking to the underground, leaving the ground level freely open to the vibrant city in a way that the greenhouse and the public will be mixed together under one canopy. So in that sense, a microclimate shall be created inside these spaces that are leveraging the connections to the city. So we got inspired from a plant cell. So the future projects itself from the old arches, creating some sort of contrast between the old and the new. And the perforated canopy sort of creates shades to the pedestrian from one hand and direct sun to the plants from another. So we didn't use glass, of course. We used high-strength polymer, ETFE, which is 1% the weight of double glazing. So this material, adapts well and perfectly to the high temperatures of Kuwait. So this is a project. So the metabolism of the project provides the end user with a sort of a natural microenvironment and delicate spaces in a way that people can sort of meet and walk and sit amidst thousands of trees and plants, and they're going to be healthy, happy, and comfortable. Well, yet another project in Korea. We had a small project built in a quiet neighborhood in Seoul, surrounded by contemporary private houses. So we were asked to create 3 lofts, in which the biggest one is for the owner. But of course, we have to respect the cultural tradition of Korea. So this is the land. This is the lovely client. It's very small. It's 600 square meters. So the built structure is a fresh reminiscent of the Chinese sharply curving roof that was once modified in Korea into a gently curved sharp angle roof with strong lines and steep planes inheriting some kind of quiet inner harmony and exhibiting some kind of naturalistic tendencies with avoidance of excesses. So we sort of created this Korean house, and then we divided it into 3 lofts, in which the biggest one is for the owner and 2 for rentals. And then we perforated it for sun access. And then in the negative spaces was reserved as a walkyard and, as a technicality. And then we created the floors. So we avoided the excesses by creating a pure form, a pure white material. But of course, we enhanced on transparency. That's really important. And then we sort of attempted to respect the surrounding context, but at the same time, it has some sort of bold and audacious attitude compared to its surrounding. So in the plans, you can see we have the dining and the living, like the living area and the ground, and the first and second, we have the private ones. So even in the interior, even the ceiling was left nude, and it's so pure. In a way, you can see the connections from the inside out as well. So architecture is really about the place and the people you're building for. So it has the ability to affect, to manifest, whether through spaces like this, through a building, or maybe through a swan. So we sort of completed a landscaping project for a client that was really interested in swans. So he called the project Swan Lake Wedding. So this is the project. So it was located in a 4,000 feet altitude mountain called Duwar. So first we had to create the heart of the project, the Swan Lake, and then up there we have the ceremony area. Then we have the welcome drink area, the dining zone, and then we have a bungalow that overlooks the Swan Lake. So we sort of designed the guidelines, and we invited nature to do the rest of the work. So we just created the pathways, the lighting fixtures, and then nature sort of grows itself and creates the peaceful spaces in a way that people can feel like in heaven. And we also created some art so we could remind us of where we are. Yes, we are in Lebanon. And we also extracted, while excavating the stones, and we used them for cladding and for levelings. So it sort of transforms with the change of season. So another small project in the middle of the Lebanese mountains. This house is a soul-mediating body situated far away from societies and the bustling urban assemblies. Surrounded by mountainous topography and dense vegetation. It offers a way of life in tune with nature. So the volume of the house is a perched element detaching itself subtly from the ground to overlook the infinite sky. And then this ascending movement is designated by an accessible stairway that connects to the facade directly. And then we sort of press the facade to define the entrance. And then we sort of deviate the right corner to give her a different character. And then we enhance on transparency again. So we sort of scrounge from nature the essential wooden material so we can minimize as much as possible the environmental impact of the project. So through energy efficiency, eco-friendly material, and a plain harmony with the surrounding, the architecture aims to conserve the biodiversity of the area to become apart from nature. Now this project is a process. This is the ground floor. We have the living, and here we have the master in the first floor. So here you can see that when you're inside, you can sense like you're in nature. You can smell nature. You can hear the sounds of birds and insects. We've also had the chance to design studio sets for TV shows. So these are projects that can go very quickly. In like a course of few months, you can get to design the project and then build it. So our first project was in 2016. It was called the Hyundai Startup Competition. This is not really a band. These are 5 happy faces after the project was executed. So it was inspired by this tungsten tam that represents the variety pop-up. So we sort of introduced this tungsten lamp as the main platform. And then down here is the jury table that represents the electrical pulse that evaluates the ideas. And then we have a LED screen up there. And then on the left, on the right, we sort of had these wings with multiple dispersed lamps that represents the variety of ideas. And then we sort of doubled the amount of the scene by creating an 80% reflective floor. So this was the rendering, and this is a real photo. Of course, we use styrofoam for the wings. It affects well with the lights. And then at the same year, we were lucky to win the high-ranked comedy talk show competition, Nahonu Best. So it was conceived within 3 parameters. First, we had this slant window that overlooks the city. And then on the left, we have the band, defined by 5 migrating black strips that are climbing up to reach endlessness. And then in the middle, we had the host defined by a swirling element, defined by 4 migrating black strips that are climbing up to reach infinity. So after 3 years, we became the exclusive designers of the show. So, you know, when I was asked to design the new set in the 5th and 6th season, before I do that, I used to spend some time with them, with the colleagues, with crew members. We used to drink alcohol because they drink alcohol before they go live. So I used to drink with them. So when they asked me to go to design the new studio, I brought them this gift, a weed leaf. So, and then I thought to myself that why don't I just introduce this weed leaf as the main platform? So we created the main platform that looks like a weed leaf, and then with this sort of gentle movement of these curves. And then on the right we have the band, and on the left we have the host connected with the guest. And then, as you can see, the design aerates its bluish tone to make people feel like home. And then we have these framed windows overlooking the black and blue city background. So this was the rendering, and this is a real photo. But of course, so we sort of designed here a sort of an access performance stage where every guest would sort of enter from here. And then on the left, on the band's background, we created these rotating, swirling wooden stripes. So the overall design gives a late-night show atmosphere. And also in the LBCI, they wanted to refurbish the studios, but they had literally no spaces. They had no spaces to build any new studio. So they wanted to build 3 new studios, but they had no space. So I suggested that instead of designing 3 different studios in 3 different areas, why don't we just design 3 studios in 1 area by using the same barcode, by just changing the graphics? So we created the main desk of the news, and then we added extensions. And so this was the extension. This is the stage of, so this is the set of the news. And by removing the central desk, we have another studio. But of course, we have to change the colors. And by just rotating the other desk, we have a 3rd studio. This is what happened. This is the news studio of LBCI, completed. So this is the news studio. And by removing the central desk, we'll have another show, which is Narkum Saeed. Of course, we changed the graphics. We used in yellow. And here they made another show after, about the shitty politicians. So it's made in red. So there's a small tribute to late Eli Qadi. So, of course, Eli Qadi died 1 year ago. And he actually designed a show called Junait. It was never aired. So they asked me to create a new studio for Tony Khalifa, but of course LBC don't have any spaces, so they asked me to use this space. So I sort of removed all the particles and left only the background, and then I sort of landed a flying saucer, a gigantic saucer that would sort of start from its ground and then it becomes a table in a way that the host can have multiple guests. And of course, we supported it with this sort of Frenchy elements, creating some sort of, futuristic aspect. So it was an honor for me to design after the late Eli Qadi. So, and this summer we got commissioned to design the stage of Mirac's store. They wanted to create a tribute to Beirut, the resilience icon. So the show is tomorrow. No, it's next week. So first, we sort of got inspired from the incidents and the events that happened 1 year ago. So we took the Silas building as a shield, the shockwave helix, and the flying debris. So we sort of extrapolated the helix from the explosion, and then we sort of embedded it in the stage in a way that the background will be the Silas building as a shield, and surrounded by all these elements, flying around it, dispersed, just like flying debris. So the stage connects spiritually to Beirut, but at the same time, the show needs to be luxurious, needs to be elegant. But unfortunately, we sort of had to we had to abort this project because the Mirac's Door family they were looking for somebody to build this for free, but it doesn't work these days. So they had to do something really simpler. So the imagined virtual can actually become concrete reality. And architecture really has the power to affect, to manipulate, to transform, to change, and to be there for people, to change people's lives. Because everyone, means everyone, deserves a clean and dignified place to live and be happy. And thank you very much.
thank you, Alexandre, for this presentation. So, for the first question we have from Martin Varga. So, he says that first he says, congrats in building a prototype of the squatter settlement. So,
Thanks.
so far there is no land in Beirut to build this project.
Too bad.
In case you couldn't find any, what will be the alternative solution to execute it?
Well, I think we already thought of the plan B because we saw some closed stores because it's really hard in Beirut to find an empty land or even to rent it because the square meter is worth really high. So we thought of instead of building in an overall land, which is really idle and optimal because when you build in an overall land, you can use the same treatment system to all the shelters, and you can use the same, tank for all the shelters. However, we thought of instead of taking a huge land and build on it a whole settlement, we can use the people's houses that got devastated, and we can build underneath it. Like for example, if you have a devastated house, you can build underneath it. Instead of building a whole settlement, you can build a clan, like 4 to 8 houses. But of course, we have to make sure that the building is not threatening to collapse or to hurt anyone. But there are many buildings that are devastated, but they are safe. You can walk underneath them. So especially in Quarantino, and there are many also buildings that got demolished, so they became empty. So this is our next destination that we can sort of build. Instead of building a whole settlement, you can build 4 to 8 houses. So instead of living in this building with 8 apartments, you can have 8 houses down here until they find safe havens. So I think this is the best optimal solution for that.
Okay. Another question is, many architects refuse to build for poor people as they prefer to build for the rich. So what is your stance as an architect that chose to build for everyone? And what message do you have for architects around the world?
I think the role of an architect is to build for everyone. You should respond to any assignment, to any situation. This is what we do as architects. We respond to any assignment. If we were asked to design a museum in the downtown, it has to be really amazing. And we need to study and to make sure that every dime we're putting on this building, it's supposed to be very well designed, very well put, But of course, whenever you have a situation like the one we faced last year ago, architects have their role. They need to be responsible and have the courtesy to design for emergency, design system, and think of systems for emergency because they are very well needed. This is when architecture is in its performance more than of its, decorative shed, as you can say. So it's performative. Whenever you lose your house, you need a place to stay so you can at least sit down and sleep and think of what to do next. You need a place to maintain your life, and get back to work whenever a disaster happens to you. If you take a look at America, whenever a natural disaster happens, they don't have a quick response, So it takes them a lot of time for them to cope and rebuild. So I think this system is needed everywhere, not only here, And every architect should build for everyone. Should think of systems.
Okay, so do we have any other questions from the audience? Anybody? Okay. So thank you, Alexandre.
All right.